Welcome to the Dare to Be podcast. I'm your host, Austeen, and I created this space so we can learn to bring more depth to our relationship with life. I want to see each and every person walk through this world in their own unique way, and that requires courage. And this podcast is meant to be a platform for life thoughts, stories, life tactics, philosophy, growth, change, and evolution to support that courage and bravery. So if you want to create foundation and inner sanctuary in your life and dare to live in a way that is aligned with you, then welcome. Let's get started. Welcome to the Dare to Be podcast. I'm your host, Austeen. Welcome to podcast number 6. We're going to be talking about keeping the score. And this was a really interesting topic. I've been working with this for about 3 years now. This concept and philosophy in my relationships with others and my relationship through life. And I had no intention of talking about it today, but I checked in with myself and I checked in with my intuition and spirit, source, God, like whatever you believe in, great nature. And this is what was flowing through me. So we're going to talk about it today. It's probably going to be a shorter podcast because we're really just going to focus on keeping the score and how that shows up in our life and my thoughts about it. And I'm hoping, my intent as always is that it's helpful and it makes you think. So keeping the score, it showed up in my life in my wedding vows. My husband and I, we created our wedding vows. And one of them was, I vow to not keep the score. And so we practiced that with each other. And then as we practiced that with each other, it began to seep out into my other relationships. And so how often do we have a mental scoreboard in our head in our relationships? Like with our friends, with our family members, with coworkers, like do we have that, oh, I did that, check mark, or tally, and then on the other side it's them, and okay, they did that for me, and like now we're even, now we're balanced, right? Like how often does that show up? It still shows up for me, but I work really hard to not keep the score, and I'm going to share my thoughts about it. So I like to base my interactions, what I give and what I receive. I like to base those on how I'm actually feeling and whether or not I'm actually going to be keeping the score. So there are times to keep the score. I want to make that really clear. There's also times that the score isn't needed. And if I do want to keep the score, it's a sign to me that actually I don't have it in me to give or to do that favor. And so it can be a compass of whether or not it's actually going to deplete me. And if it's coming from the wrong space, if I'm going to be giving this, like if I'm giving it under conditions and agendas, then it's not mine to give. Like I actually am not in a space to give that. And so that's why keeping the score can be so important in relationships, because if you continue to keep the score and you keep on giving and keep having all these agendas and conditions around your relationship with others, like that can backfire. And this is like not both parties are not aware of the score. Like we probably, if we do keep the score in our relationships, we probably have different scoreboards if we were to bring them up side by side. Like maybe my best friend would have a different scoreboard than I would if we were keeping the score. And so that's why it can also become an issue, because they're not the same. They're different perspectives, different experiences. This score, this tally might be a big one, and for them, it was a small one, So that's why I think keeping the score can be detrimental to relationships. But then there are very important times when a conversation needs to be had that the score should be taken. But both parties need to be aware and in agreement of the score or of the favor owed. Like an example would be giving someone money, right? Making it clear when that money will be owed back and that money will be owed back. And maybe it won't be owed back. Like money is just a common example. You might give money away because you have it to give and there is no score associated with it. So keeping the score. Let's talk about giving first. So when you give matters. Like, what do you actually have to give? And if you feel like you're giving someone something based on a subconscious agenda or condition or a feeling that you owe them, so you should give it to them, give them whatever, whether it's a favor, time, like your time, or something in like a material item. Like if you're giving based on those, for me, the give doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel, it does feel intentional because the intent could be good or bad or in debt or of surplus, but it doesn't feel like coming from a heart space and from love and from deep care and deep want that I want to give this to you. And so when I'm giving someone something, it is a practice of mine to check in. Am I giving it from a space that is going to be expecting agendas and conditions later, or are going to be expecting an O? And what I have found is when I feel like they need to owe, or they need to give something back, and like they're going to owe me, I try not to give. That's a sign for me that I don't have it in me to give, because I'm going to be depleted, because I'm going to want something in return. So when you are giving away something, like check in with that. Do you actually have it to give? Okay. Will you feel like you're owed something? And why do you feel that way? And do you need to take care of yourself first in some ways before you give that away? And maybe that will be better. Like maybe then you can give it away without any agenda or conditions based on it. So thoughts for you. You know, my hope is that when others do things for me, like when my mom does something for me, my parents and my friends and even my clients, like I have the best fucking clients, guys. Like they have showed up with flowers and banana bread and just like gifts. And my hope is that they're giving that because they have it to give, and that they don't want me to be in debt to them. They don't want me to owe them anything, but they're doing it because they actually have that space to give. And there's no conditions and there's no agenda based around it. And so that's my hope, is when I give, those are my thoughts. And then that will make it so I don't keep the score, right? Because there's nothing attached to it. I don't need to hold on to it in my memory. Like, okay, I owe this and then they owe that and now we're even, or they still owe me a little bit more. And that's my hope for others when I receive, like when they're giving to me, I hope that that's the space it's coming from, because I'm not going to tally anymore that now I owe this person this thing, because my hope is that they know themselves enough that they're not giving it to me with the thought of me now being in debt to them. And so that brings us to, actually, it brings us to receiving. Like, when do we receive, and how do we keep the score when we're receiving something even? Because we don't only keep the score when we're giving, we keep the score when we're receiving as well. And that's the intent here, is to practice not keeping the score. Unless, which this is what I want to circle back to, unless the score needs to be taken. And there are situations when that does need to happen. But what happens is it tends to be kind of not at it doesn't come into the conversation. It's something, I can't think of the word right now, but it's behind the scenes. It's not spoken. I cannot remember what that phrase is right now. But I think you understand what I'm saying. At least I hope so. So when those situations happen, when the score actually needs to be taken, I practice speaking that out loud. Like, hey, yes, you can stay here, or I can do this, or I will give you this money, but it needs to be returned to me. It needs to be sent back to me at this time. And I need to be, that money needs to be returned to me. and I am feeling that, this is coming from a space I'm giving this, and I expect to be owed back, paid back. And so I just think it's good practice to voice that out loud when those situations come into play, because a lot of times we just keep it under the surface, behind the scenes, and they're just assumptions that, okay, I'm going to give them this and I hope they pay me back. Because that's what the reality of the situation is. I feel like they need to pay me back, but I don't voice that. I mean, I do, but I'm just saying in the past, I haven't voiced that, or maybe there's situations that I feel too intimidated that I don't voice back. So the practice is voicing that agreement. Yes, I can do this, but, and yes, I can do this, and I'm expecting this in return. And that is important to be able to do that because it makes it clear. It makes it so then both parties understand the situation. Both parties are in agreement before anything is done or given or received. And it can help with resentments later or keeping the score, keeping those tallies. But us having different tallies, like that person might assume that you given them that money, that thing, that time, that favor, because you had it to give. If you don't up front say, I can do this and this is what I'm expecting in return, it's okay to expect things in return. Okay, that's a really hard concept. You don't have to go around just depleting yourself, having giving and granting favors all the time. But part of the practice is keeping the score only when it needs to be kept. And if it does need to be kept, then both parties involved know the agreement, the conditions, the agenda, and the score. Okay. Otherwise, when I'm giving, I'm not keeping the score. And if I am, both parties know about it. But other than that, everything I'm giving, it's at least right. I'm trying. It's not 100%. I'm not perfect. There are times when I give and I'm like, ooh, now I feel that agenda. I feel that now I'm going to be waiting for them to do the same for me. I feel that. And then I'm like, okay, Austeen, that's a sign that you've given when you shouldn't have, or you should have been upfront with, I don't really have that to give. And I can't do it. So you can say no. No's are very powerful. Or it's like, yes, and this is what I'm expecting in return, right? So keeping the score. That's about giving, and giving under the conditions of both parties knowing that this is the agreement. If the score does need to be kept, because there are situations that it does. And then just giving because you have it to give, and knowing yourself well enough to know if you can give without keeping the score. Okay, let's touch on receiving. So part of keeping the score is usually like an energy exchange, right? They are, you're exchanging some form of energy, whether you're giving and receiving. And so there's this other person, or maybe it's you, that is receiving that energy, whether it's time, money, material, whatever it is. And so it's also important to not keep the score when you are receiving. So when you are receiving something, you don't need to keep track of everything that you are now in debt to others. Because some people give on their surplus. And my hope is that everyone does give in that way. And if not, then you both are aware of it because you have that conversation, right? So can you receive this? Can you receive whatever gift, whatever favor you're about to ask for without keeping the score? Now, I think it's lovely and awesome when we are grateful and we take that favor, or, we receive that compliment, we receive that time, that gift, and we want to pay it forward, right? That's lovely. That's important. But don't keep the score that, okay, now I have to give, I owe this person, and let it stress you out. Like, fall back, lean into the idea that, yes, I want to pay that forward to them in the future when I have it, when I feel right, when I can feel my intuitions, like, okay, now's the time, you have the extra to give, and you'll give not in a way that's keeping the score, right? So when you receive, how are you receiving it? And do you tally all those receives? Because then we can feel this burden, this heaviness, this load that we owe all these people. And that probably isn't true, right? Because they have given freely. And I think why I'm bringing this up, because I think we would be in a much better space if those of you who are giving give from a surplus, so you aren't keeping the score. So then those who are receiving don't have all those heavy burdens on them and think they owe all these favors now. Because there are times when you can just receive and not give anything in return, because it's not expected. There's not always a condition, an agenda around it. And I think, you might receive something and it might be really big to you, like a huge receive, but that person, it cost them very little, whether in energy or money or time, and they were happy to give it, right? So if you feel like the score needs to be involved, we talk about it. And if it doesn't, then practice just receiving without having to owe them. Like, you're not always in debt to people when they are giving stuff to you, okay? Like the banana bread that I receive from my clients, I just receive that. And I'm like so thankful and so much love for them, for that. And then that's it. That's the end of the cycle. And it will be paid forward to them in other ways. And I'll pay it forward to them in other ways when I have it to give, if I feel called. But I'm not tallying every small little thing. Like, I want to give to people out of love and out of appreciation and gratefulness and excitement and just honoring them, not out of, I'm now in debt to you, right? So that is keeping the score. Those are my thoughts about it. Let me see if there's anything else in my head about it. I just feel really called to share this piece of my life philosophy and my concept of keeping the score, because it's so easy to do. It's so easy to keep the score. It's so easy to feel like, okay, now you're in debt to me, or now I'm in debt to them because they did something nice for me. How dare they, right? And my dare for you today is to ask yourself how often you keep the score, right? That's the question. But the dare is really to be honest with yourself about it. I keep the score still more than I would like to, but this is an active practice in my life and in my relationships. And I also make it very obvious when I do ask someone for a favor, this would help me out a lot. And don't do it if it's too much on you, or if it's if you're going to be keeping the score later. Like, don't do it, because I don't want that to be in our relationship. So ask yourself, how often do you keep the score? And the dare is to actually be honest with yourself about it. And maybe you take a look through your relationships and see, okay, where do I feel like I'm on top versus they owe me? And the ones where I feel like I owe them. Like, that's a sign that you're keeping the score in those relationships. And how do you feel about it? And just what do you think about this altogether, right? Everything I say as in yoga, these are suggestions, these are thoughts and concepts. And they're yours to try on. Like, I'm not preaching. I'm not telling you there's one way to live, but maybe there's some wisdom here that you want to take and put into your relationships and into your life. And I think that is important to remember for every person, every experience, everything you come into interaction with in life, is that there isn't one way and there isn't the way, okay? And you can try on a bunch of different things and your life can be very different and it can feel very different. And I think it's just important to be honest with yourself and with others of how you live your life, and especially the people that are close to you. Like, for me, my husband knows we don't keep the score. I haven't said this to actual friends, like, hey, I don't keep the score. Like, I don't come out and say that, but how I interact and the words and the choices and the words that I choose to interact and say, and the language I create has this feel that I don't keep the score. and that I'm going to give from this space and receive from this space. So that is podcast 6. We are halfway through this season. There are going to be 10, my goal is 10 episodes, maybe more, but 10 episodes for season 1. And then I'm going to take a small break, recalibrate, and give you guys season 2. If these podcasts have been resonating with you, or you think they'd be helpful for someone else, like please share with social media, with any kind of networking. Word of mouth is the best way to support small businesses and entrepreneurs. So thank you in advance if you do that. And just also thank you if you don't. Like if you're here just listening and finding it impactful, like bless. Like that was my goal all along. Okay, a few things if you'd like to stay on here. I am teaching a yoga teacher training. I'm a yoga teacher, massage therapist. I know I haven't kind of circled back to what exactly my credentials are in a while. I'm an athletic trainer, my master's degree, and I'm teaching a yoga teacher training next year in March through June in Brooklyn, Michigan, with the one and only Holly. She is a wonderful human being, a great space holder and yoga teacher, and she's a counselor. So she has her degree. She's been in the schools for a long time. She's got so much knowledge and wisdom. So if you would like to learn to become a yoga teacher, or you want to deepen your practice, that's going to be a great offering. I also have one spot left in my yoga retreat in St. Croix, Yoga in Paradise, February 23rd through March 1st. One spot left. It's a shared space with a student of mine. Her name is Angie, and she's been a longtime student, and she would be a great roommate to have on a retreat. And then I just announced my second yoga retreat for next year, 2025. It's in June 8th through the 14th. It's in Costa Rica. It's called Nurture, and it's about tending to your whole self, nurturing your whole self, fertilizing the pieces of you that don't get fertilized and nurtured and taken care of in our day-to-day life. And the goal and the work of that retreat is the yoga, the enjoyment, right? The Costa Rica, the jungle, the mountains of Costa Rica. And like, how can we bring some of those pieces of ourselves back into our day-to-day life? So I would be completely freaking honored if you joined me. Yoga retreats are one of my Dharma works. They're one of the things that I feel like I am meant to do and cater and hold space for. And I have one coming up in September. It's called Tending the Temple. That one is full, but I'm getting so excited to be in space with these women. And gosh, it just, when you find stuff that lights you up, like hang on to that work. And that's what yoga retreats, that's what space holding, that's what group work does for me. So I'm very excited. Okay. I think that's it for today's podcast. Have a wonderful day, and gosh, just keep showing up to your life. Keep doing the things that you're doing. Do your best every day. And that's going to look different every day. Know that you're not above your problems, right? I said that in the last podcast. You're promised every experience in this life, and the universe isn't powerful. The universe is powerful, but it's not fair. So like life, as one of my friends say, life be lifin'. I like that because that's what life does. It gives us all these experiences and all these obstacles, and we're not above them. Like this is what we signed up for, depending on what you believe, when we came into this earth. So just do your best. Take care of yourself. Take care of your own. Hold your own. Like you got this. I believe in you. And I hope to see you in the future, friends. Okay. Have a wonderful, I've been saying wonderful a lot. Let me try a different adjective. Let's say, have a scrumptious day. Scrumptious. Yeah, let's roll with that. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friends. If you found value in this podcast or it made you smile, please consider leaving a 5-star review and subscribe on whichever platform you are listening on. This allows other like-minded people to find me. If you would like to support me in other ways, check out my website, austeenheaney.com, or freetobeyogaandmassage.com. Thank you, and don't forget, sometimes the biggest dare that we can do in a day is to have hope. Until we meet again.